Florida State to the Big 12. Could it happen? Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate y'all being here, typically on a Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, with our guys, James Coleman, Chris Frazier, and George Georgitis, but special edition here with all the talk and rumors on social media. So before we get to Chris and get to James Coleman, who will be joining us in just a second, I want to make a few things clear here at the Voice of College Football concerning our perspective and what we do and how we approach these topics. First and foremost, ever since the realignment landscape blew up, starting with Oklahoma, Texas, USC, UCLA, and on down the line here in the last 3 years, we've taken the approach that we, of course, respond to actual breaking news. We should be your go-to when USC and UCLA announce they've gone to the Big Ten. We're going live, and then we are following up with schedule breakdowns, how those schools will compete in their new conference, all of those things, formation of the leagues, how it should look, all of that. Okay, the second thing that we respond to would be breaking news in regards to prominent people. I'm not talking about from the media. I'm talking about people, influencers, chancellors, presidents, ADs who make statements that are of obvious direction. North Carolina AD a couple months ago, we need to leave the ACC. Okay, that's important. That's substantial. We will respond to that. Otherwise, our job has been simply to respond to the news or the reported news and go forth again. And we specialize in building schedules, building formats of leagues, laying out the pros and cons of individual football programs and institutions on why they would be a good fit or not be a good fit for a particular league. Okay, what's happened here in the last few days is the same thing that's been going on for 3 or 4 years, is that there are a number of people online, and I'm not going to speak to their credibility. Some have credibility, others do not. Some are dealing in speculation completely. They're just throwing crap at a fan. Others have reasonable sources that they draw from. And then we see the outcome of that is that either they're right or they're wrong, or sometimes things legitimately change and they may have a credible source and lead us in a direction, but that situation changes. Sometimes that's simply an excuse that they can rely on to say, hey, I had good intel, but the situation changed and it's a fluid situation. But sometimes that is an outright lie. So we don't know what all of that is. We can only take people and follow them and base our opinion based on their track record. But that is our approach here at the Voice of College Football. So with so much talk about Florida State going to the Big 12, and of course, we know that they're fighting two fronts against the ACC right now in court. We've got our guys, Chris Frazier from Spear Addicts and also James Coleman from Den Media Group are coming on board. Chris, appreciate you being here, sir.
Yes, sir. It's fun times in Florida State football, it seems, and the entirety of the university, I guess, based off of all this realignment stuff. So we'll see what happens.
So there's been talk over the last few weeks that although Clemson and Florida State are making their moves in court about leaving the conference, and it's been basically an assumption and an obvious assumption for all of us over the last year or so to assume that they would be exiting for either the Big Ten or the SEC, and that's been the focus, those two conferences. And certainly the thought process there is we welcome in James Coleman from Den Media Group as well, that the process has been, obviously, you're leaving the ACC because you're going to go to a greener pasture in the Big Ten or the SEC. And those are enormous, top-of-the-line elite football brands. So they certainly would be attractive and wanted and desired by either one of or both of those two conferences. So now we're in a situation where there's all this talk, Chris, about the Big 12 and Florida State having to default to the Big 12.
Well, the only situation that I can go to is I'm not going to say that there's not a short term like Verizon type contract that could happen, because this is the only potential that I see in possibilities, is that the Big 12 decides that they'll pay X which I don't think that they will based off of financial reasons. But if there's, for some reason, they believe it's a financial gain enough to risk it, because it would definitely be a risk, you could see Florida State and Clemson maybe a year, 2 years inside of a Big 12 situation. And just so people understand, the disclaimer is I don't see this happening at all. I'm just throwing out the only possibility that I can see happening, and that would be to let Florida State, um, instead of being independent, they ain't got to worry about scheduling and things of that nature. It takes a headache away, maybe. Um, but it doesn't make any sense long term for Florida State to go to the Big 12 instead of just staying right where they are, based off of the new deal that is currently with the Big 12. They're just now getting their teams paid 31.6 million, and I am only speaking about media money. I'm not speaking about the totality of what the Big 12 does for universities. I am only talking about what it does as far as sports go. So 31 is less than what Florida State makes right now. In the ACC, they make 36, which is supposed to go up to 44 next year. So my issue with that is also, the Big 12 is at 31.6 at their current amount of members. So, as if they was to add Florida State and to add Clemson or add anyone else, it should notch that down if they're going to make them just regular members. So, financially, it makes no sense for Florida State or anyone from the ACC to jump ship to the Big 12 business wise. It doesn't add up. So I don't see it happening in any way, shape, or form. All these conversations that people keep dropping, that Florida State and Clemson and so on is talking to the Big 12 behind closed doors. They're talking to the Big 10. Well, am I going to say there's never been conversation? No. Am I going to sit there and tell you that Florida State's not going to sit there and listen to everything that everyone's got to say? Yes, of course they are. That's business. You got to listen to it. You got to understand where everybody else is coming from, because you use that in as a leverage to whom you're with and to whom you would go to. So if the Big 12 comes and tells you we'll pay you X for X amount of years, if you come over here, you're going to turn around and use that with the Big 10 and the SEC, and also with the ACC if there's any potentials of staying there, which there literally isn't. But you still use all of these things to your nature. So I I would love for all of this to come out from Florida State as far as exactly what's going on, exactly what their potential is, the probability, their intentions, even. That's just not the way that this is done, because it's completely illegal for Florida State or any of them to have any type of real conversation about where they're going until they're out of the ACC. So all of this speculation from multiple sources or non-sources, whatever they are, it's kind of funny based off of, it's just there's not a whole lot of merit to what's being said. There's a lot of assumptions because of the potential of, oh, this guy from the Big 12 spoke to so and so, and that's fine. Conversations are going to happen. It's just in the nature of official conversations, a real conversation about what Florida State's going to do. Those have not happened. That's all hearsay, and it's pure speculation, no proof. There's no documentations. There's no recorded conversation. There is no even evidence of seeing these people together. So we got a road in front of us that Florida State's concentrating on, and that's getting out of the ACC first and foremost. I believe personally that at worst case scenario, that Florida State leaves the ACC and is independent for 1 year, and then I'm going to separate these two real quick. Florida State, based off of TV revenue and scheduling, they could make it'd be more of a headache, a little bit more work instead of just joining the Big 12 or any other conference for that matter. But it would make them more money to go independent for a year than they would if they was just to flip scripts and go over to the Big 12, unless the Big 12 came out with some crazy number. And I just don't think that they're willing to risk that with their other members as of doing something better for a 2 year contract or something of that nature.
James Coleman, Den Media Group. James, we always appreciate you showing up for us, man. Know you got a lot going on, so thanks for being here. What is your initial response to what's been talked about for the last week or so?
I think I think it's not out of the realm of possibility to drum up conversation and controversy, seeing as it was Big 12 Media Days. I think that was the bigger response in all of this, and even the guy who brought it up, was it Pete Thamel? I believe that's what it was. Don't quote me on that, but he was on a radio show and the hypotheticals were brought up.
I know
And he
Ross
spoke.
Dellinger did.
Ross Dell, that's it. I apologize. Thank you. I want to give credit to who it was. I just couldn't think of it off the top of my head. But he was on the show and they talked about this. And then what happened was a lot of people kind of ran with it. So much so that he even went out and said, guys, I didn't have any source. I didn't say anything. I just literally just said this. What ends up happening, though, is you can get enough people talking and then it becomes a story because enough people are talking about this. It's not even kind of on the realm of speculation because Florida State leaving the ACC is a purely monetary thing. Currently, and I just had this funny argument with one of my friends about whether Big 12 football is better than ACC football. That's up for interpretation and discussion. What isn't up for interpretation or discussion is this. TV contracts, the ACC is bigger. They are considered the third, the conference right outside of the SEC. When you look at Clemson, FSU, and their breadth of how they command TV markets, just as big as if this was their big city. Doesn't matter when they're playing football, people are watching those games. Even if you add Miami and those different things, there's the rivalries, minus Texas, Oklahoma, which is now going to be in the SEC, are bigger in the ACC from a national perspective. And again, going back to, so that's just from a football perspective. If we go back to the other reasons and just quoting the athletic director, we cannot take a $30 million per year hit in comparison to our rivals. What you would not make a decision to go less money when you're already complaining about not making enough money where you're currently at. So there's that thing. Secondly, the only way, and there's nothing, I would never say something is impossible to happen. But here's the deal. The only way that you can make this plausible is also what FSU kind of introduced and the ACC kind of did, because we made more money each team than what was originally projected through some other means. You would have to agree to pay FSU, because I believe they also said Clemson as well, FSU and Clemson exponentially more than what the current members, including guys that you just wooed over here, are getting paid. As a man, I just can't fathom saying, oh, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with Florida State and Clemson, us finding 60 to 70 million a year to give to them while I still make 31 million. That doesn't make sense either. Just all of the things don't even make logical sense when you kind of just go and play the whole paperwork. But even as Chris alluded to, if that's the case, we can just do what Notre Dame does. And while it's more strength to be in a conference, we can just play the game, play the teams that you want to play, create. I'm sure ESPN or somebody will buy the games because, again, all the statistics. We have I can't think of his name. What's our guy? The guy with all the stats, Mark, that you've been having on for the last 2 years as well.
Tony Altimore.
Yeah, Tony TJ. That's right. Tony comes in and show you every figure that. I think it was Florida State was one of 10 schools that commanded over 50% of the actual TV thing. So when people say Florida State's value isn't there is nothing outside of a little bit of hatred, a little sprinkle of hatred, but your opinion. The facts and the data don't line up with me taking less money to just be affiliated with a conference. We'll just stay where we're at. We actually have a contract till 2036. But nobody enters these kind of deals or takes the steps that Florida State's taking without having an idea of the direction in which they're going. It's a huge risk that nobody takes if you don't believe you're going to at least make $50 to $60 million with that risk once you get out of it. So you don't even need to be an insider to take to really pay attention to this stuff. You just need common sense and reading tea leaves to know that doesn't make sense.
So your final point there is one that I've made many times, that I just can't believe that even though negotiations and so forth cannot be had at this point, that Florida State would invest this much effort, legalities, all the cost involved, all the public scrutiny involved, to detach themselves from a conference and make this bloody mess out in public of this court battle without having strong indicators that they are in a good place going forward, that they have a landing spot that is going to be more profitable.
Without a doubt. Whether it's the ACC, whether it strengthens the position with the ACC, which I strongly doubt any of this will, whether it's Florida State going independent, whether it's the Big Ten, whether it's the SEC, I doubt you see them go backwards is the point. Like the Big Ten just, if I remember correctly, they not too long ago signed their television deal. So like they don't even have, like, if the Big Ten was 2 years away, right, from re-signing another television deal, okay, now let's talk, makes a little bit more sense. You bring in an FSU, a Clemson, or something like that, you completely change your comp. Like, you basically, the two teams that you lost, you kind of arguably you regain two better teams. And before anybody jumps on me, look at Florida State and Clemson since 1996, because that's when Texas entered the Big 12. But like, look at these schools since Texas has 5 conference championships and 1 natty during that time span. Florida State has 13. Basically, the most of the conference championships in the ACC are between FSU and Clemson, and the only national champ. Miami has a natty, but they were in the Big East. But the only conference national championships that were had during that time are from Florida State and Clemson. And even if you want to go back to the last 20 years, Florida State and Clemson, outside of an Ohio State national championship, correct me if I'm wrong, are the only schools, Texas would be just in that 20-year span, are the only schools out that not named SEC that have national championships. So like, let's be for real. Like, those, like, ain't nobody is turning down the only two of the only other programs that have had major significance, if you believe Texas and Oklahoma were the big dogs when it comes to that. Historically, especially in the short term, you have 2 universities that not only have the academic prowess, but on the athletic field, they have more prowess. There's literally all the metrics that we hold up to, that are outside of the Big 2. I mean, that'd be my only mic drop on that one.
Yeah, the way you frame it there, it can't be debated. Now, I could go into some kind of long dissertation on Oklahoma, comparing Oklahoma the last 20 years to Florida State, and I could certainly stand up for either school and make my case. But
well, no, I apologize. I'm not saying that to say Texas and Oklahoma aren't worthy. I'm saying that to say, if you believe Texas and Oklahoma were highly coveted to the SEC, and that's your argument, you can't say that. You'll be hypocritical to say that and then say, oh, nobody wants Florida State and Clemson, when literally from just from natties and conference championships and things of that nature, I would say Oklahoma's consistent has had a level of consistency probably higher than both of those schools. Oklahoma's been in numerous national championship games. They only won the one. That would be 24 years ago.
So getting to the point that we were just making concerning Florida State making a move and then be in no man's land, which some people are speculating about, that they would be out there hung to dry, and how ridiculous that would be. The thought about the Big 12 that makes it a little bit more appealing to people, or a little bit more believable to people, would be that the Big 12 and Brett Yormark, I credit him in a number of ways. He makes a lot of delusional statements that I won't get into right now, but he is trying to do everything possible to expand this league, to make it the chic, to make it fun, to make it new age, to get it out into the future. And obviously the private equity portion of what he's talking about, getting at just a bulk load of money up front, and then also the naming rights of the league that would bring some ridiculous amount of money, of course. That's what people, I think, are attaching to the possibility that they could then make the deal so good for Florida State and or Clemson that they could get them into the league. Although, James, you made the comment, of course, then that kind of puts off their previous deals with other schools, and to completely imbalance the revenue structure of the league to bring in two other schools doesn't make for a good situation. But that's at least what people are going to in terms of the Big 12 having the money to pull this off and make it equitable for Florida State.
I just don't think it's not so much that it can't happen. I can't see the other schools that are there agreeing to paying what would need to be paid in order to get Florida State and Clemson to come over. That's just like, it's again, going back to what Michael offered and being seconded by the president of the Florida State University. We're at a $30 million deficit in comparison to the school that we're really only competing with. Like all this other football and athletic stuff is cool. I'm just going to be honest with you. Florida State sees only one university that they feel like they have to beat. And that's how most state education systems go. That's the University of Florida. And you can't be behind in certain aspects and then want to do that. So there's that thing. But I don't think that the Big 12 will be sitting idly while all of this conference realignment stuff goes through. So if Florida State, Clemson, and whoever gets the opportunity to leave, I do believe that the Big 12, with these new money revenue, these new money things, will go and try to expand the conference. I just don't see it being Florida State, Clemson, or those guys, but I do see them trying to poach the ACC and get us to a Big 3.
Chris, anything on that front?
I mean, there's certain people that go and they get Rolexes, and then there's other people that go get a G-Shock. Both of them tell you time. Both of them usually last a pretty good amount of time. I'm not trying to be rude and ugly to anybody, but the truth of the matter is the Big 12, they go and buy G-Shocks. Nice G-Shocks, but that's what they get. The Big 10 and the SEC, they go buy Rolexes. I mean, it's just like, be honest with ourselves. The money is the money. The price is the price. And the Big 12 won't go empty-handed. They'll end up with some ACC teams, Boston College, Syracuse, something to those natures. But Florida State and Clemson, I think people are reaching for the stars, and I think it's fine. I'm glad that the Big 12 has no problem with stating that they want us. Nothing in that situation is a problem. It's just, I mean, I want a $40 million mansion too, but you know what? That's just not my realm of possibilities. The want is there. It's just the cash flow it's missing for me to do those things. That's the only thing that I can really say without getting too gritty about what universities are worth versus what conferences can pay. And that's just, we have to be honest with ourselves. It's a great story. It was a great speculation. It's all those things. And like I said, the possibility of it being a 2-year Verizon contract, okay, I can swing that way maybe. I just think there's a lot of hurdles that they would have to overcome to get there. They maybe can rent their Rolex, but they ain't buying it. It's not in the fathom of possibilities right now. I don't know what money the Big 12 would snatch and where they would snatch from to be able to do this for a long period of time. But we'll see. I mean, I'm also not going to sit here and say that some of the greatest things that have happened in this country came from garages, because they did. Apple came from a garage, Microsoft came from a garage, and so on. Amazon, being one of the largest companies in the world, it all started in a garage. So I'm not going to say that it can't happen. It's just there's been 3 or 4 in the history of our country, and to be exact. So I just don't see the Big 12 being one of those. And this is a different metric of what you're trying to do. It's not just create this specific company to do specific things. And every consumer in the world is not going to buy it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think Florida State's directed toward the Big 10 or the SEC, or otherwise all of this was for no reason.
Will the University of Florida do anything to try to keep Florida State out of the SEC?
I mean, if they're smart, they would. I think they're pretty smart.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's always been one of the funny. Everybody likes to use the Bobby Bowden quote, like from years from decades ago, which ironically was after a year that Bobby went 3-1 against SEC teams that year. Like saying that, if you're smart, you stay out of. But the funny thing is never in the history of anything has a coach determined what conference that a team plays in. So but there are things that I do believe that the University of Florida gains to. This has nothing to do with fear, like from a fan perspective, but to gain for not having FSU to be in the same conference. Recruiting wise, they always can use it. This is the SEC in terms of that. Obviously, money wise, that is a huge gap that has been there. So why would you purposely help somebody try to close that unless there's some true benefit in there for you? And but I personally also think though if it comes down to it, and it's really up to the networks. How bad does ESPN want to prevent Fox and NBC from having a true national sports network? And what kind of money, what kind of funds, and what kind of things that come with that. And I also think that the SEC or ESPN, whether we all believe it or not, whether there was some grand scheme or conspiracy, whether we believe it or not, there will have to be probably discussions about how to not have an opportunity for a 13-0 national 13-0 conference champions not even be given the opportunity to earn the ass whipping in which everybody thought that they had done. So there will be some. I'm pretty sure there will be some conversations to make sure something like that at least doesn't look like it happened again. Whether that's what happened or not is irrelevant to the case.
And you guys are both on the record as wanting the Big Ten over the SEC.
Yeah, I would prefer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And clarify for everyone why.
Well, mine is more. I would much rather perfect example. This year, I served on the Gator Bowl committee, and I was going to actually go watch an Ole Miss game. That was my goal. I'm looking up plane flights to Oxford, Mississippi. And then I'm told there are no plane flights to Oxford, Mississippi. I have to fly to Memphis and then drive 2 hours. That makes absolutely no sense to me. I know if I want to go watch Ohio State, I know I can fly into Columbus Airport. I know if I want to, certain things, there is the access to bigger cities, which means there's also better deals for hotel rooms. One of the things that Florida State fans consistently complain about is how it's $750 a night with a 2-night minimum to watch an FSU home game. Everywhere in the SEC is pretty darn similar. You can't get hotels in Gainesville. You can't. I looked up. I wanted to go see Alabama game. Damn near every hotel in that 2-hour area is almost sold out, or the prices are that high. So even when people are like, "Oh, it's closer to the game," it's really not. It ends up costing you the same amount of money, except for you're not. I like big city life. I like certain hotels. That's me being selfish more than anything else. I also like some of the other things that are available to the Big Ten family. They have a Big Ten alumni network that is really, really good at trying to help people get jobs in particular athletes outside of those things like that. That's part of the real outside of a few places I know. But if I don't know how far Happy Valley is from Philly or Pittsburgh, but I do know that there's other places that you could fly into. Be able to get just thinking about even the places that are in the more rural Midwest, there are ways to be able to get around and get to those places.
You picked out about the most remote place in the Big Ten, Happy Valley. They're kind of lost between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. You may get into Harrisburg possibly, but yeah, point well known. I worked close to Starkville, Mississippi, covered Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Alabama for 7 years. And yes, people complained all the time coming in from all over the place to Starkville, Mississippi, because no, you're going to Birmingham and driving 2.5 hours, or Memphis. Yes.
What I will say is this: whether either conference, me being a local Leon County guy from Tallahassee, Florida, great for the city, because what I do know is that regardless of who we play, all the games are going to be sold out. Like even with the because it's going. Florida State will be a draw. There'll be a school that you don't get a chance to see that often. So a lot of those games will be sold out. It will kind of force the city's hand into making more hotels to be able to handle either one of those things, as well as the airport would probably already have to expand, even though they have a relationship with JetBlue, which is blowing them up. Which JetBlue, if you go and look where JetBlue typically flies, it would also kind of point you in a direction to where why not bring Southwest or somebody else more access? Whereas JetBlue will get you damn near anywhere in the Midwest or the North or the Northeast where you want to be at.
Chris, why the Big Ten over the SEC?
I mean, other than greed, the money is the biggest portion of it. What it does for the entirety of the university is the second portion of it. The potentials of getting AAU statusship and things of those nature. I think being in the Big Ten helps you with those things. Um, Obviously, the money itself is there, even more so than what the SEC is getting right now. Will that change potentially? Not if you get Florida State and another big name out of the ACC. I believe that the Big Ten can continue to name their price to go up. I think that it's better for the big. I think we're wanted more by the Big Ten than we would be the SEC. We've played the SEC so relative, like it's happened so many times that it's it's almost like we're in the SEC without being there. We're not getting the payment, but we play the LSU's 2 years in a row. We play the Florida every year. We played Alabama previous years. We're about to play Alabama another couple of years in a row. We're about to play Georgia in a couple. I get all of the reasons why Florida State fans think that the SEC is a better fit. Outside of that, I would rather feel like I'm playing a bowl game every weekend. And when we play Ohio State, when we play Michigan, when we play Penn State in a whiteout game, when you're at the Horseshoe, when you're in the big house, like I just don't. My questions come into what is the bigger game? What's the more money talk? What's the better feel for not just the university or the players, but what's the better feel for the fans, the fan base? Like I understand that the SEC culture believes the SEC is the best, and that's fine. You talk to the Big Ten, they'll tell you they're the best. At one time, the ACC would tell you that they had at least two of the best teams out of all college football. They would say it. Now those words have started to change, where the ACC is just not good enough. So what's the best? Why would our university not shoot for the stars in every metric? Not just for football revenue, not just for sports revenue, but for revenue in totality to try to take that flagship spot from the University of Florida for being the flagship University of Florida. So the way that you do that isn't by going and mimicking what your nemesis is doing. It's fine. You probably would, if you are that much better, you could compete and outbeat them in those subjects. But why not go and take an advancement? Why not get a bigger portion of the pie? Why not be part of your own thing and do it your own way, and then become the flagship University of Florida? It. I'm not saying that you can't copy it, and eventually, in a couple of years, a few years, or 5 years down the road, win that state over and be the flagship university. But why would you not advance it even quicker and make it 2 to 3 years under the Big Ten, with the amount of money that you're going to get, with the amount of the research that's going to be shared with the university, with all of the things that come with being in the Big Ten, and making the Big Ten the national brand that it wants to be so badly. I think the Big Ten wants the national prominence so much more than the SEC wants to stop it. Like bringing Florida State into the SEC is the SEC feels the same way that I do about it. Well, we already play them all the time. Like what's the big catch here? The only thing the SEC wants to do is to stop the Big Ten from becoming a national brand. So the question comes is which one wants what the most? Does the Big Ten want to become the national brand the most, or does the SEC want to stop the Big Ten from being able to get in their backyard? That's the question that we're going to sit there and go back and forth with, which means does Fox want national, or does ESPN want to stop them from becoming national? So we'll see which one wants to pay the most money. But the Big Ten to me is a no-brainer. It makes much more sense for the university in totality. It brings Olympic sports. It brings all kinds of things that Florida State's been gearing up for the past 15 years. And now you've got the people in place that are trying to make that happen. and you're reaching for the stars. Why not? You're in a situation where your university is wanted by X amount of conferences if you do leave. If it is all of the other three, then great. You're still wanted by the one that you're trying to leave. Great. All of the things are adding up for Florida State to benefit, and also for Clemson to benefit, based off of what they've done in recent history. And it's, the totality of the history of both universities. It just makes more sense Florida State wise in the way that they've geared themselves. If you go to Florida State, if you look at what they're doing as a university, it doesn't look like an SEC school. It doesn't look like an ACC school. They have geared themselves to look more and more like how the Big Ten operates, and all those Big Ten universities. It, like, all of the stuff that's around us is telling us the story, but we don't want to read it, or we're just not wanting to comprehend the obvious. I'm not sure what exactly is going on with everybody, but it is what Florida State has done. It is, you went and hired President McCullough. I know I've made these statements multiple times, but maybe everyone didn't hear me, and maybe reiterating is not a bad thing. But you go and hire him from Harvard. He was the president of Harvard. I think he would know a thing or two about trying to get you AAU statusship, right? And then you go and hire Michael Alford, which Michael Alford, it created a 626% growth in 1 year at the school in Michigan that he was the athletic director of. Comes to Florida State. He was also at the Dallas Cowboys office. Then he comes to Florida State as the president of the Boosters, and then you make him your athletic director. And then your growth under him within 3 years has been, I don't even know how to explain the actual word that I need to use, as how big and huge of amount of money that it's brought to Florida State University. The private investors that want to invest in the university, becomes a little bit of a red tape because you're a state entity. It's kind of hard to make those types of things. If you're a private school, then it would be easier. But they're going through those motions to get around, or through legally get through those red tapes, so that people can invest in the university, and so that it can become what it's meant to be this whole time. Florida State didn't set out and say, you know what, the moment we're not an all-girls school anymore, we're going to stay right where we are. We want to stay this exact size. We don't want to grow. We don't want to compete for X, Y, and Z as far as national championships, flagship statements. No one, that's not the American way. Capitalism is the American way. And the American way is for us to reach, and for us to go after what we want. And the only thing that's going to beat us is not trying. That's the only thing that's going to stop you. So Florida State's doing exactly what they're supposed to. I wish people would read more into what these other universities do. And then you would notice who you're trying to look like. And when you try to look like and you become like, there's a statement that if you hang around trash long enough, you start stinking. Well, if you hang around rich long enough, you start learning. So it's something that Florida State's been doing for a long period of time. So my question comes is, are we really paying attention, or do we only care about the scores on the football field? Those are important, but it's not the biggest, and it's not the most important.
Somebody brought up in the chat about 11 a.m. Eastern time kickoffs in the Big Ten. Well, you would have 11 a.m. Eastern time kickoffs in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Starkville, Mississippi, Oxford, Mississippi, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Columbia, Missouri, Norman, Oklahoma, Kyle Field, Texas, Texas A&M, University of Texas in Austin. Like, if you have plenty of 11 a.m. kickoffs as well.
I think what they're doing, and Mark, you're now just realizing how they're talking about geography and the weather is what they're trying to hint at.
Yeah.
You're getting an opportunity to see what the summer is like in Florida. It's quite humid and hot. But one of the things that you don't realize is in Tallahassee, Florida, is literally South Georgia. One of the things of growing up in Tallahassee and why mat drills were so hard wasn't because they were just hard. It was because when you walk out of your dorm room at 5 a.m. in Tallahassee in February, you could be walking out to a 10-degree temperature with a minus, with damn near a zero feel like temperature. It gets cold in North Florida. Like, it's a different type of cold. It's a wet cold. It's like going into a pool and then going into a house where the air conditioning is dropped below 50. Like, it sticks on you, and there's not very much that you can do about it. That being said, as a guy who was born in the Northeast, Trenton, New Jersey to be exact, you can miss me with that BS. It is cold sometimes, and it does snow, but it does not get bad until actual winter, which is December and January. Also, most colleges play 7 to 8 home games. There's only 12 games in a season. That means you're talking about 4 freaking games between September, October, and November. Tallahassee, we have a mandated game where we have to play the University of Florida Thanksgiving weekend. So you can scratch off one weekend in November. We're going to have a homecoming and a senior night in November, whether it's Florida or somebody else. So that can scratch off 2 weekends for you in November. That means we will play the first weekend in November, and consistently it ain't snowing. And guess where we already played? I don't know if you've ever heard of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but we already played there. And if you've ever looked at a map, look where Boston, Massachusetts is. And both of those are outdoor stadiums, and we've played both of them, and we always play in the north. Also, they're going to send us out West Coast, to the West Coast. Now, I don't know what it's like in Washington. I've only seen Fraser, and it looks miserable. But, it's probably different there. But, I mean, the reality of the situation is it doesn't snow every year. Every time it's not always cold. There are times when it snows, but there's some times when it's not. And another part is I'd actually rather play that early game than the night game sometimes, because I played in Virginia. We played a night game in Virginia. It was pretty damn cold when we played that night game in Virginia. And again, this is not from hypothetical experience. This is from lived experience and played experience, which probably very few people on this chat have ever had both of those opportunities. So, the reality is, it's talk about that. Have you ever been to Tallahassee? Like right now, the Miami, Florida game is going to absolutely suck because it's 3:30 in the swamp. We have 8 games, 7 to 8 games. I'd be more afraid of being from Columbus, Ohio, and having to come to play in Tallahassee in the middle of October when it's 95 degrees. Because it has been that before. It's more often than not. So, shoot. You don't think Florida boys want better weather? Hell, what the hell's wrong with y'all? We want some cool weather too sometimes.
Well, that was going to be my point. To extend on your point is going to be those Florida State players may not mind leaving 93 degrees in mid to late September and playing in 70, 72 degrees in pick your spot in the Big Ten. That's much better football weather in September and early October. And there was a site out there I found a couple months ago that did a really great study. They took the last 10 years of college football results and mirrored what would have been college football playoff games. So they took all the teams that would have made the 12 team and did all those on-campus games. They did 112. I don't know how far back they went. They might have went 20 years or something, because they did 112 games. It would have been snowing 7 times. And there would have been one game of substantial. They found, and I think ironically, it would have been Florida State. Was it Florida State? It was somebody from the Deep South playing at Wisconsin with 7 inches of snow. This would have happened one time. But the other 6 were just kind of like snow flurries in the air kind of thing. No accumulation of snow 7 times out of 112 games. In the playoffs, this is in late December and January. This is not in October or November.
Big 10 championship played in Indianapolis, right?
Yes.
Oh, well, cool. Yeah. All right. Well, man. All right. That's the only thing I'd be worried about. Inside, that's a dome. A dome. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I did some research on the typical Ohio State-Michigan game in Columbus, Ohio. The final weekend of November in Columbus, it's 60 degrees average. So and again, I know that Columbus is one of the more southern spots in the Big Ten, but certainly Maryland is warmer than, or as warm as Columbus, and so is New Jersey at Rutgers. Anyway, yes, you're going to run into some cold weather you don't like. There's no doubt about it, but it is way overblown. Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, the one thing I wanted to hit on before you guys leave, and I appreciate you being here, and before we do anything else, James, you got your book bag drive. Point people in the right direction.
Yeah, I might I'll put out another tweet, but if you go to at Big Game James _36, it's my pinned tweet. You'll see where the 3 locations are and how to donate. Money sign, if you have a Cash App, money sign MFTK36. We do book bag drives in the inner city communities in Orlando, Tallahassee, Jacksonville. Each book bag is filled with about 9 weeks worth of school supplies, as well as they get a week's worth of food for the families, and we do a football camp that is attached to it. So in Tallahassee, we'll more than likely have a bunch of current and former Noles that will be going through the kids. In Jacksonville, well, actually, the cool thing I do at Jacksonville is we do a all the top athletes, and we have a big concentration of 5-star players here at Jacksonville this next couple of years. That's my old one. That's the different. Yeah, that's the _36. That's just Big Game James 36.
Got you.
But we have the high school youth come out there and do different things, as well as a parent coaches symposium. So $36 basically covers the cost of a book bag, week's worth of food, as well as a football camp for youth. The goal is to get 4,000 bags. We're actually at 1,990 right now. This is my 5th year doing it. It's how I celebrate my birthday party, and this year it'll be my 40th birthday, and we're going out and pushing it. So I've been blessed that, again, I had the Orlando Seminole Club. That was one of the pins, the posts that we had up there, and like I said, I appreciate everybody who's donated or given back to it.
Well, James, sorry about that. It's fighting me. It defaults to the other one every time I.
Oh, right there. It's actually on that. If you look at my my info and go right behind FCN Sports, my other page, Big Game _36, you see it right there? Yeah, you just click that.
All right. There we go.
And scroll down a little bit more. And then if you click that tweet, the first tweet, the quote tweet, up, just click on that, not the video, but what's under the video. The tweet under the video, right? Yeah. So that tells it. But if you click on that, it actually has the flyers.
So, folks, that's Big Game James _36. Big Game James _36. So I think I got to correct that on his banner as well. And there we go. I tag you every week on these shows, James, and I probably tagged the wrong one. So I'll have to get squared away on that. Before I let you guys go, in regards to, obviously, Florida State's not going anywhere until they get out of the ACC. What is next in regards to what's going on in court right now, what that means, any dates upcoming that are critical there?
You got that, Chris?
I mean, I'll just say that nothing publicly has been said. It doesn't mean that there hasn't been some type of informant that goes out, but there was real big this past, I don't know the exact date, but this past court case in Leon County, the judge decided that Florida State should get an unredacted, damn, if I can think, the GOR, they should get that, and that's what the judge ordered. So they're now Florida State's gonna get an unredacted copy of the GOR between ESPN and the ACC. So that's big. It's huge. But I think more of this is going to take place outside of court. It's the same thing we've been saying. I think there's enough conversation going on that people should know. But Florida State has a big board of trustees meeting that's coming up on the 22nd. So I think people should be aware of that. But public announcement hasn't happened yet, but I see that it's going to happen soon enough.
All right, good stuff. And certainly I see some Big 12 fans in the chat section, and Big 12 fans comment to me all the time thinking that I'm hating on their conference. I love the Big 12. I watch a lot of Big 12 football. I probably know more about the Big 12 than a lot of I will flat out state that I do know more about the Big 12 than most Big 12 fans by far. So I love the Big 12, but facts are facts. And if you're in the position of Florida State or Clemson, you are going to make the better choice. That's business. That's obvious. That should not be debatable by anyone with any reason or logic. But you can still love your conference. And I want the Big 12 to thrive and be a major player in all of this, because I don't want to see college football torn apart any more than it already is. All right. James Coleman, Den Media Group. Get on over to Den Media Group. What's going on these days, James?
I'm just trying to get prepared for the football season. We got the Gator Bowl 80th anniversary, so we'll have basically our channel will have different shows. So we'll have This Week in College Football with the Gator Bowl. You can, if you want to understand the bowl selection process, my guy Greg McGarity, former athletic director at the University of Florida in Georgia, has tons of great stories, but he also does a great job of explaining bowls as we also go and predict and try to figure out who will be the two teams that would be in the Gator Bowl each week. Big Games BS, we were about 70 subs away from reaching 6,000. Once we hit every increment of 1,000 we hit, we give away $500 to a listener on the show, live to a listener on the show. So you don't have to, subscribe, please, but you don't have to be a member. But our members also get 2 extra opportunities to win a couple $100 as well as the amount of likes on that show. We get to 10,000 subs, I'll be giving away a pair of tickets, season tickets to more than likely a regional school of choice, Florida State or Miami. I probably won't buy you Florida tickets. I'll just get you a card. I just don't have it in me to support their booster program like that. But those are the things that we have going on under that, outside of just having some really great opportunities. I think August 30th, we'll be doing Jamie French, the 5-star prospect from out of Mandarin High School. We've been doing a lot of live announcements. So we had Tramel Jones, we had Drake Stubbs, and we'll be doing, more than likely doing Jamie French's August 30th, which are really, really cool to just witness and be able to do those things, especially for kids that you know.
Before you go, Chris, I just want to mention something in the chat here. Somebody said that I blocked them. I haven't blocked anybody in years, and that had to do with probably some kind of racist comment or something like that. So I don't block people, so I don't know what happened there or what you're seeing. All right, Chris, what's going on there at Spear Addicts?
Well, trying to get back on schedule. Been off for the past couple of weeks as far as the schedule goes. We were able to do a show Tuesday, and we were also able to do a show Thursday. But usually it's Mondays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to try to get back on track as far as Monday goes. We should be on at 8 p.m. Eastern. Look forward to seeing some of like Michael Alford's and a couple of the coaches coming on to the show. I finally got those things situated. So should be big for them to come on and hear their sides of everything that's going on and get a little bit of context from Athletic Director Michael Alford. Things to that nature are what we're gearing up for, ready for the season to start. But I think that getting some of the coaches to explain what they've done over the off season, what their team's doing, specific to position, getting them to speak, and then have Michael Alford speak about the totality of what's going on at the university in general. So I think that everybody should enjoy those episodes coming up.
Thank you, Chris. And just to reiterate, John Holmes, half of my posts never make it online. I know nothing about that. I don't monitor the chat to that degree. I don't block anyone. I put people in timeout, but I haven't even done that in months and months and months and months and months and months, maybe years. So I don't know what's going on there. The only reason I would ever put anyone in a timeout is when they threaten YouTube guidelines. All right. For Chris, for James, guys, you know that I so much appreciate you answering the call. Thought that we needed to clear the air on this topic. So thanks, guys. Appreciate you being here as always.
No problem, Mark. Appreciate
Next Florida State show, Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time, everyone. Make it on back next Wednesday. Chris, James, George, and myself, Wednesdays at 6. See you then.